what's really crazy is these microphones are super sensitive.
Yep.
So you can hear what's happening downstairs
Oh,
really
really?
easily, including what people are talking about downstairs.
So you can leave these downstairs and spy on people.
Yeah, so if I leave these on...
Oh, upstairs, so yeah.
Yeah, so if I leave these on and like someone's in the corner over there just having a little private conversation, we could definitely hear everything that they're saying.
So what you're saying is we're going to take this to nationals and put it in the Queensland camp, and
Yeah,
Yeah.
Actually, this would work really well. So this here is through, like, these aren't actually the best microphones for podcasting. They're really good for a lot of other stuff, but they are really good for spying on people.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you put it like right up like here, and like Queensland was like behind a wall over there somewhere,
yeah.
and you know, like Miles and Angela, they're like talking strategy, you'd be like, whoop.
Yeah.
Just listen to everything that they were saying.
All right, so the drones. What else we got to pack for national?
We do actually have a drone at RAW Barbell
I'm
Club
sure
as
you
well.
And now I know what you're doing during the day, mate.
Yeah, well, it's not lifting.
Too many skateboard injuries.
Yeah. Well, I spend so much time here, so I want this place to be like a playground for me.
Of course.
Which is why I buy dumb stuff all the time.
Well, it's not dumb. It's like you must have a creative mind, I guess. You're like,
Well, it's dumb in the sense that I can no longer clean and jerk anymore because I've like hurt my wrist so many times.
I guess I wasn't this once. I was like, oh. Yeah.
No, yeah. So I actually, I had a dirty clean. That's where it started.
Yeah.
You know, when you like catch it real bad, and that was really irritating on my wrist.
Yeah.
And I sort of like rehabbed that, and it was getting a lot better.
Yeah.
And then I took up skateboarding.
Yeah.
And that's when I really fell and hurt myself very badly.
Yeah. Have you hurt your wrist before, or is this like the first time?
I've hurt. I think I probably have hurt my wrist before.
Yeah.
Not as bad as it is now, though.
Yeah.
I'm gonna just have a try of this fan because it's getting super hot, like instantly. Hopefully it's not too much louder. Do you reckon people at home will worry about this noise in the background?
Yeah, I don't know. It should be alright. We're more comfortable, better conversation.
Yeah, I guess we're the most important. So.
Oh, you know, I might try to change my angle. There we go.
Oh, now you're taller than me. How you been, man? Like, it's been a while since you've been here.
Pretty good, mate. To be honest, I've had a pretty slow and reflective start to the year in terms of just taking my time to do things. I was like, after Christmas, like all that sort of fun stuff with the family, I spent 2 weeks up at my caravan. So it was just 2 weeks of relaxing and surfing, and it was good.
And that's like you get a lot of enjoyment from surfing, right?
Pretty much, and that's where I'm kind of at the moment with my training. It's like, because there's no sport I'm doing at the moment, and surfing is something I always loved, I was like, well, that's just my main go-to. It's like, if I can do one piece of exercise in the day, it's surfing, and then everything else just supports that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's where I'm at the moment. And
So what does your one piece of exercise look like at the moment?
or surfing. So
surfing
yeah,
is
so
your
that's
one
that's
piece, okay.
if I could only do, let's just say you got 1 hour to exercise,
Yeah.
and I would surf rather than anything else. And then my yoga, the weights that I am doing at the moment, which is only just recently started back up, is all to support me with surfing sort of thing.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. And how's your surfing going?
Slowly getting better, but you know, there's still some out in the surf. There's still some 12-year-olds straightening harder than me, but it's slowly getting better. Yeah. So that because I live near the beach, if I have a son or a daughter one day, I don't want them to have a dad that sucks. You know, I want to be like a cool dad that can kind of go all right.
Still carve it up.
They can still carve it up, you know. So they're not going, oh, dad, you suck, you know.
Is that on the cards? Because you only got married like recently, right?
Yeah, a year and a half ago, but yeah, it's on the cards. I'd love to have at least one kid, you know, not 2 or so, but yeah, definitely at least 1, you know.
And what does your wife want?
Oh, yeah, she'd be happy with 1 or 2, yeah. So
how are you finding your holidays?
Good.
This is like the longest holiday for teachers,
Teachers,
right?
yeah. So this is my longest break teaching. I'm back in the weight room coaching as of like a week and a half ago.
So the weight room does close as well?
Just over that Christmas and New Year, just to sort of, it's more like a symbol sort of thing, like just to sort of be like, look, go away, spend some time with your families, you know, and the weight room will reopen. So if you're in Sydney, come along, but just to have that sort of end to the year sort of feeling. And
Yes.
a few kids still go to, there's plenty of gyms offer free memberships and holidays for kids and stuff like that, trying to rope them in,
Yeah.
So they can go to that if they want, but I think it's healthy to sort of just have a bit of a pause and reflect at the end of the year. And family is important to me, so I think it's good for the kids to sort of have that time, to be like, I've got nothing to do except for look after some, eat some food.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a problem with weightlifting in particular? Like, because we don't really have an off season?
I think it's a problem if you're allowed to be a problem. I think it's up to the coach and the individuals to have a good, long, hard look at what's required and when do you need to be peaking, when do you need to be qualified, and those sorts of things. It makes it harder when, weight categories change and then qualifying standards might change or not be released by a particular time. So you sort of got to be, once they're released, have a sit down and look through things. Yeah. So I think it's more of a challenge rather than like an impossibility.
What about some of the other sports that you're involved in? Because so for people that haven't listened to the previous podcast that you were on,
go back and listen.
Yeah, it was look, that was an awesome episode. I had so much fun, and that's why I got you back. Yeah. But Kurt is a high school teacher, but he is also the head strength and conditioning coach for the gym that resides within the school as well.
Yeah.
And that operates out of school hours.
Yeah, before morning and afternoon basically. Yeah.
And its membership includes mainly the children that go to the school, as well as for certain PE classes as well. You guys teach, was it PARS?
PARS, yeah. Sometimes they've come in for a bit of just looking at him body functioning and different anatomy, sort of mix up the classroom scenario a bit more of a practical learning experience. Yeah.
But maybe you'd obviously be better equipped to tell us more about your role.
My role? So we'll go through it again. So essentially, I'm a PhD teacher who also teaches the elective known as PARS, so Physical Activity Sports Studies. I also manage the tennis and athletics program, as well as the head strength conditioning coach, which is basically running the weight room. So exciting multiple roles and keeps you on your toes because there's always something happening.
And as part of that, you deal with not just weightlifting, you deal with a lot of different sports.
Oh yeah. So basically any kid can come in. So you got a year 7 fencer train at the same time as a year 12 rower, and that's cool. And
is fencing a big sport in your school?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it's actually a really well run program at our school. I'm very pleased with how they do things, and there's apparently 3 different types of swords, and it's like a saber, and so one's good for like striking, one's more for like a stabbing, and there's another one for both, and so it's cool.
Yeah, we never had fencing when I was at school.
Well, that's just why I love my school, because like basically anything we can do, we just do it. You know what I mean? Like whatever we can offer the boys, we just try to do it, and I'm very proud of that aspect of the school. Yeah.
How much do you think that helps the students just grow as it's a boys' school, so I'll say as men, but you do cater to women at the gym itself,
yes,
right?
Yeah. If any girls from the girls' school want to come, I'll
so
try.
That'd be Sydney Girls High, right?
Yes,
Your sister school.
Yeah.
So how much do you reckon that plays into just effectively creating like mature and high-functioning adults?
Oh, short response is a huge part. I think sport does a lot, whether it's individual or team, to sort of put you in a challenging situation, and you sort of have to work problem solve and get out of that. You know what I mean? And there's constantly tests and battles within your own mind as well as like an actual field and court, and you got to go through training and development and improve yourself, physically and mentally, and like just manage your time as well. And time management's one of the greatest life skills you can develop, and I think when an adolescent has multiple things to do, so their study, their potential like family commitments, and then sport and extra curriculum, it just allows them to sort of be like manage their time and develop their skills earlier rather than later.
And your school's a selective school as well. So,
Yes, yeah.
academically,
Yeah.
it ranks very highly too.
Yeah.
How important do you think just physical or just movement or sports are to the academic side of things?
Yeah, well, I think from what I've learnt over my time being there is that the the boys seem to respond to things where there's clear outcomes set. So you treat everything like a learning curriculum or like a learning program. So it's like very.
Bring that mic a bit closer to you.
Sorry, yeah.
That's right.
So very sort of like you set out what needs to be achieved in order to progress, or like move to the next program, or like lay out the structure and expectations, and then they seem to respond really well to that. Yeah, and this like because they are so driven academically, they don't like to be unprepared for like a sport or some sort of physical activities. They want to be prepared. They want to train. They want to develop to improve on that. Well, at least most of them do anyway. Yeah.
Most of them.
Yeah, not all of them. But, that's part of our job. Is to sort of create a sense of accountability to your own physical health, as well as pay the sort of. And that's why we have so many different sports. It's sort of like realistically, a kid can do so many different sports at the school. They should be able to find something that they can gravitate towards. You know what I mean? Like whether, like we said, fencing, or it's rowing, or it's sailing, or cross country,
Weightlifting.
Weightlifting, and that's a big part of what I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a few boys that love the weight room more than any other sport. And it's just where they're at currently, or where they're going to be in the future. Maybe we'll see.
How do you help a student navigate what sport is right for them? Do you just let them have free reign, or do you push them in certain directions according to maybe their anatomy or just the way they behave?
Yeah, so I think we give them we got a Year 7 Tri-Sports Day coming up, and some boys might have a preconceived idea about what sports they want to do and what they love, but not every kid has the same opportunities in primary school as every other kid. So they're going to come into school and they're going to trial all these different sports that we offer in one day. You know what I mean? Like that's all they do. It's like an orientation day of sport. They'll come in and they'll play tennis for 30 minutes, and then they'll go play basketball, and then some OzTag, and then they can sort of get a bit of an idea what did they enjoy, and they'll choose a sport based on that.
Yeah.
And there's no sort of holding kids in a program. If they commit for a season, the expectation is they commit to the whole season. You know what I mean? But if they want to change the next season, there's nothing really to stop them, and that's they got free range sort of thing. But I think the only thing you could do as a teacher or a coach is sort of challenge them if they want to leave, as to why are they leaving? Are they leaving because they didn't enjoy it, or do they sort of say, if it's something on the lines of they might think that the training's easier in another sport, it's like, well, maybe that's not a good reason to leave the sport. Maybe you need to be challenged for particular reasons, So it's sort of try to guide them to make decisions based on the right sort of reasoning, like what's your reasoning behind making this decision, and is it, and then they can sort of go through that thought process, because quite often, we all remember being a teenager, you make a decision like that.
Oh yeah, I mean, when I was young, I was not equipped to make some of the decisions I was even making at that time.
Yep.
And I mean, I was sort of just very lucky that my parents put me into a whole bunch of sports that I not only weren't that good at or I hated, but they also put me into sports that I liked that I wasn't good at, or liked that I was good at. So I was able to just try a lot of things out, and I never stuck with anything until I found weightlifting. But I only found that when I was much later in life, and who knows, maybe if I had seen that when I was younger, maybe I wouldn't have liked it at all, but maybe I would have liked it. So it's really cool that the students at your school are able to just, at least maybe even if they don't try weightlifting specifically, but they experience, or they're around all of these sports, and they're also in the weight room. They have you don't have to do weightlifting to be in the weight room, but if you're exposed to it, and you look over and you see Rick Saha, for example, doing a snatch,
Yep.
and you're like a little year 7 kid, and you're like, oh wow, that guy's not that big to be lifting those heavy weights.
Yep. And that is what I love about our school gym, in the sense that it's never ever a squad outlook. It's never like, oh, this session is allocated for this group. It's like, these are the sessions that are open, and the boys will come to the session that fits their schedule, because the boys are doing a million and one things. So we just have the sessions, we can keep it open. So we do have that. You have boys that are going in and they're just starting out, and they might wonder, like, why am I, having to do an overhead squat? And then they look over and they see, an older boy or snatching, and they go, oh, like they can start connecting the dots, and they can see the progression through the program. It's like, how do you get to point A to point B, and little things they can work on. And I think that's a valuable sort of part, you know what I mean? Like, so they're
Do the kids train together? Like, so will you have like year 7s with like year 12s?
Oh yeah.
In the gym?
Yep.
How does that dynamic work? Do the older kids often take on that sort of like mentorship role, or any sort of role within the gym, or is it just sort of?
Yeah. It's some boys gravitate towards that sort of role better than others.
Yeah.
But it's the expectation is, if you see a younger boy and they might be struggling or they're a bit unsure, that the older boys are meant to sort of give them some sort of guidance, and just as a coach takes the load off, but it also helps enhance them. So currently I've got the new boys to year 7. They put out an email to all the parents. They can come to the gym and try it out. So I've got these new kid sessions going for these next few weeks, and they're doing weights and sprints and stuff like that. And some of the coaches that are assisting me are boys that just finished like last year or like 2 years ago, and they've sort of had little tastes of sort of coaching already, that they've seen a boy and they got help them out here and there, and so they're not sort of starting coaching from a very base point when they're doing these little activities with me. They're sort of like, I've dabbled in things before.
And that's kind of how you got into it, right? Like, you had a mentor that sort of brought you on as a assistant coach, and that's how you got the role that you got,
yeah,
right?
Very blessed, yeah, very lucky. Yeah.
What do you see as like a way of other schools getting involved in like the type of stuff you do? Because it's not like, I don't hear about this very often from many other public schools. I think you guys are the only public school that are a GPS school. I think you said that last time.
In New South Wales.
In New South Wales.
Yeah.
But then on top of that, like, you just have so many sports in general.
Yep.
Like, what can a teacher at another school, or principal at another school, or just like even a coach, like, do to sort of get their foot in the door? Like, do you know how this started?
In terms of strength training?
No, in terms of just exposing kids to more movement, or even just we'll talk about the gym after. I want to just talk about the sports, because it's very easy to just get caught up in basketball, soccer, rugby, cricket, whatever, and then that's it,
Yeah, well, people have approached me and like wanting to instill programs to our school or any school and ask for advice, and I'm sort of gearing them towards set it up like an actual how I feel a program should be, in terms of you have expected outcomes, and like you got like, maybe say you got 4 stages, like stage 1, 2, 3, 4, and what does that look like? What encompasses stage 1? Let's just say we're looking at gymnastics, and it's like, okay, so stage 1 is forward rolls and cartwheels, and then what happens in stage 2? And so you're delivering a program. So if you were to sit down with the principal, you go, okay, well, let's just say we start all the kids at this level, and hopefully, within each term we move through a stage, and here are the outcomes to achieve for the next stage. Here are the learning expectations from this. What is this skill going to help them with? And also maybe even throw in some, like teaching cues. So these are the messages we're going to be delivering to help them achieve that. Like really put it down on paper to submit, and so people can look at it. So it's not just sort of you talking about, but everyone, we can talk because we know what weightlifting does for an adolescent or an adult. We know that we've seen people go from, they can sort of move, but we know we can get them moving better. But if you're talking to someone that has had less experience or no experience, you need to put it down in a thing they understand, where they go, okay, so they go from this, let's just say you go, okay, we're going to do some overhead squats. You're like, all right, sort of stable sort of movements, developing movement, strength, and then we go, oh, the snatches over here, in stage 2 or 3, that's more dynamic. It's okay, so, and everyone can sort of understand where you need to be dynamic and explosive in sport, and they go, oh, so we connect the dots, this is why it's important, or could be beneficial. So it's sort of just laying it out, how you're going to do it, and that requires effort. But that's the sort of effort you need to meet to sort of to turn people's thoughts, like why should they invest in your program, or why should they bring you on board to assist in coaching. So yeah, getting that foot in the door, I think, it is difficult, and if you are talking about public schools, funding will be the biggest barrier.
Yeah. But stuff like that can also be crowdfunded, right? Like you can have outside funding for the gyms. Like if you have a group of parents or a community that wants to do that, you can fundraise that stuff.
Yep. Yeah, and that's how our weightlifting club got started. We fundraised. It's also how I got boys back in the last year to do their first comp. They did the Active Kids rebate, and the shoes that they were wearing were like, one boy wore my pair of shoes, the other one wore some shoes that were donated from other weightlifting clubs like Odd Socks and other various people. So yeah.
I mean, I remember when you first opened the club, and Odd Socks gave you that bar as well, right?
Yeah.
Which was
like that's
a
still
really
our best
generous
bar.
gift, right?
Yeah, that's still our best bar.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Osaka training bar, and
Which is awesome.
It's cleaned every week. Look at as good as can be, So yeah, and that's the thing, You gotta be willing to ask for help. Like look out there, like who's done this before, who's done similar things, who can help me out in coaching, and particularly I think in more unique sports like weightlifting's a good example. There are people that would definitely be willing to help and assist and give guidance, and so I think it's
Do you know who Dan McGovern is?
I don't think so. No.
They have that young kid. So Dan and Lisa have their son. I think it's Max, who's a little weightlifter as well.
Oh, like from Shred?
No, they're from that's Deacon.
Oh, Deacon. Sorry.
They're from Newcastle, Hunter Barbell.
Okay.
He opened the first, I'm pretty sure it was the first, CrossFit affiliate within a school.
Oh, right.
So he coaches a lot of kids as well.
Yep.
I reckon he'd be a really cool person to talk to, other than you.
Yep. Oh, definitely.
And there are people, they just seem to sit in their own little silos. Like, I guess you guys are just doing your own thing, and you don't hear about you guys as much unless you like come into direct contact. It's not like us where because we're a like a for-profit gym, we're sort of out there promoting ourselves. Like you don't really have to do that because you only have to promote 2 within the schools. Yeah.
So I'm lucky in that sense that like I've just got my bubble, I guess, that I have to look after. But in saying that, it is a busy bubble. Like after this beautiful long weekend, Australia Day weekend, I go, I think until April, I work 6 days a week. So yeah, that's my sort of like next few months. I did the perpetual year planner, and that's where we're at. So yeah, it's a busy schedule, lots going on, but it's exciting too. And yeah, but that's why I make the most of the school holidays to get out there and surf, and come here and do some coaching, talking, and catch up.
Well, yeah, I was super jazzed when you hit me up because I haven't done a podcast in a while. Just I had no time, man.
Yeah.
It's so hard to sit down for an hour or 2 or whatever it is. But like, I love doing these. And last time you were here, remember how much fun we had?
Yeah, it was really good. I think I was here for like 6 hours.
Well, you're going to be here for 6 hours today as well.
Maybe longer.
Yeah. What are we going to do? We're going to...
I'll sleep here or something.
Yeah. Well, feel free to. We're going to... we finish the podcast, shoot some videos.
Yep.
Do some training.
Yep.
And then...
I'm going to check out how your gym functions.
Yes, yeah. Hopefully people turn up today.
Well, even if it's only one person, I'll still look forward to it.
Maybe you can do some guest coaching as well.
Oh, yeah.
They actually don't have much weightlifting on today. They're just doing some strength work.
Okay.
I think they have some overhead squat. They have an overhead squat complex. Then they've got some incline bench.
Yep.
And deadlifts, heavy deads.
Beautiful.
So that'd be pretty good.
Yeah. And do you do a lot of heavy deadlifts with your weightlifters?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, I really like deadlifts.
Yeah.
Mainly because I like them. I'm built for them, so
Yeah. Yeah.
they're something that is really fun for me. But I think they're really important too. Like, do you do a lot of pulls with your lifters?
Well, like in terms of like my lifters, we'll talk more just about the general gym program.
Yes.
So they're all coming from a foundation, I guess you'd say, of strength. So like all the boys can deadlift far significantly more weights than they clean. And that's why like you see them on the platform, and when they're cleaning the weight, you know, their back isn't rounding or anything. And that's, you know, there's nothing, for me, there's nothing worse when you see like a person's back in a clean, you're like, oh, like it's
In the pull off the ground.
Yes, yes. So they've all deadlift significantly more weight than they can clean yet, and then their technique catches up, you know, sort of after high school sort of thing. So yeah, that's, in terms of, I would consider a deadlift to be a pull exercise. Yeah. So we do a lot of pulls then, definitely.
Yeah. So what I meant to say, so like with your guys, do you see a lot of benefit in things like more dynamic pulls where the weight is much lighter but they're moving the bar faster or more closely resembling the snatch and clean, like a snatch pull, clean pull, as opposed to like a deadlift or a snatch deadlift or a clean deadlift?
I guess it will depend on where they're at, but I think a loose answer would be, as they're sort of like developing stages, you sort of want it to be all like in a controlled sort of fashion, and then like use the Olympic lifts specifically for that sort of close technique. And then as they get sort of a little bit more accomplished, then you sort of want to gear things towards like, okay, we're doing dynamic efforts, so we might be lifting more explosively, and we're just doing a pull or something along those lines. And then when they're doing like a bit more strength, and yeah, so you sort of just trying to factor into where they're sort of at in their programming and their, you know, their age and their development stages all come into that. So yeah, it's sort of something I can't really give a direct answer to.
That's
so,
fine.
Yeah, so
It's just interesting to hear what you have to say about that stuff, because like obviously your population is very different to my population.
Yeah.
Though I have a few kids training with me now.
Hey,
Yeah,
that's awesome.
some young teenagers.
Awesome.
Which is cool. I have a 16-year-old that might start training with us, and I've got a 14-year-old.
Yep.
And he's awesome.
Yeah.
The problem with him is he's a big kid. Like he's just tall, like muscly guy.
Yep.
And it's very, like, he's taller than me, much taller than me.
Yep.
I mean, that's not hard, I guess, but it's easy to forget that he's 14.
Yes, yeah. Oh, isn't it though? You just look at them, and especially when they're taller than you.
Yeah. And when he talks too, like, I mean, you know, if you talk to him long enough, you're like, oh yeah, you're 14. But you know, he's just awesome.
Well spoken sort of thing.
Yeah, he's well spoken. And he comes from a sporting background, and he actually had ACL reconstruction.
Oh, right.
So he came to us to, you know, both get stronger so he can move again.
Yep.
But he's sort of like starting to like the weights now.
Yep.
And it's really cool to see. So he's not a weightlifter. He's just like a guy that's there to get stronger and maybe eventually get back to the sports that he loves.
Yeah, and like, from my perspective, there's nothing wrong with weightlifting being their second or third sport that they do.
For sure.
You know what I mean? If you look at the calendar, you've got, you know, like the youth, I think youth nationals and youth state in New South Wales is in school holidays, both of them. Do you know what I mean? Like they can go to at least 2 comps in school holidays, and you would think there'll be less likely a chance of a Saturday sport being on those days. Yeah. So, you know, like, you know, you can do it. And I think that's kind of a look that I've always sort of had. Like, it's not within my job to sort of take boys out of a sporting program at school and going, you're going to be my weightlifting superstar. You know what I mean? It's like they're doing their sport, they're doing their thing, you know, and weights training is part of what they do, and they're going to come to some comps if they want to, and then after high school, you know, we'll see where you're at. And that's my outlook currently, and I think it's a kind of a safe sort of model within Australia, because I think that's, and you know, the kid might just one day say, well, this is the sport I want to choose, and they go with that, or they might choose earlier. And you know, some kids, they're involved in nothing, and then weightlifting is everything for them, you know, which is fantastic as well.
And something that is dangerous as well and we see it with a lot of weightlifting adults,
Yep.
is that weightlifting can become your identity.
And
And that's a dangerous thing too, right? Like you don't want your whole life to revolve around one sport, because if you can't do it anymore for some unknown reason, then you're screwed.
or you're not the best anymore. It's
Yeah.
like, and I'm so glad that they've introduced the under 23s. I think that's a cool thing, you know what I mean? Because there is a difference between someone that's, you know, like not a junior anymore and an adult.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Can you just explain to maybe the people at home what the AWF have done?
Yeah, so essentially, you know, there's under 15s and then there's youth, which is under 17s. Some people call them, you know, both youth, but you know, they're kind of two separate categories in terms of medals and all that sort of thing, and trophies. And then you have your juniors, which sort of, you know, goes up to, you know, under 20s, yeah? You got to be under 20 to compete in that.
Yeah.
And then it used to be that once you completed through those age groups, you go straight into a senior competition. Whereas now they've sort of got an under 23s sort of cult sort of section, which sort of just allows just to bridge the gap a bit. You obviously, if you're good enough, you're still going to compete in the seniors. But I personally feel it may keep those juniors that, you know, they're sort of, you know, they're doing well, and then they go and they're like, rather than sort of just, you know, in the back of the pack of the seniors, they've got another age group to sort of work and develop their way through. I feel it may keep a few more people in the sport, you know what I mean, as opposed to those people that identify, well, I'm the junior champion, and then I go into seniors and I'm all the way at the back again.
Yeah.
And because I think, you know, like, you know, you can call it what you want. You know, I'm sure some people say, well, they just have to toughen up and all that sort of thing. But I think anything you can do that sort of has some sort of level of encouragement and recognition, I think is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, you see that just probably every day, but competition is super important for any athlete.
Yep.
But being competitive as well for those type A athletes, or those athletes that were doing well, like part of the reason that they continue to do a sport is because they're good at it.
Yeah.
Or they see themselves as good at it.
Yeah.
And they get much enjoyment out of that. So if they go from this, like, you know, young superstar to suddenly the bottom of the ranks,
Yep.
just with basically a day,
Yep.
like that's all it is, right?
Yep.
Like ticks over to January 1st,
Yeah.
and they're the worst in Australia, or worst in the world.
Yeah.
So having that under 23 category is hugely important, and it's something that we used to have.
Yep.
So it went away, and now it's back.
Yeah,
which
well,
is,
I think most sporting programs kind of have that cult under 23 thing. It's just the recognition that there is a difference between, you know, like a 25-year-old to say a 21-year-old.
yeah, I mean, they're still developing.
Yeah, they're still developing, and also like, particularly the ones that they might be just starting out at work or university, or they're going in between both. You know what I mean? Like, they're sort of like their timetables not set in stone, and you know they're sort of just sorting themselves out. You know what I mean? It's sort of that. So for some boys and girls, like that's the sort of age where they need to just sort of look at their life and sort it out. And if they're sort of, you know, sorting their life out, going to near the bottom of the seniors, you know, not performing that well, they go, well, they might just sort of pull out. Whereas they can go, oh, I can sort of stick with this and slowly, you know, do it in my time and improve in the under 23s go through. I think it's a good thing personally, yeah. Long term anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, we did get off topic because you were talking about, I don't even remember what you were talking about, planning, I think, planning your year out.
Yep.
And that they've been smart enough to put youth nationals and whatnot during the school holidays,
Yep.
which is a big deal as well.
I think so, yeah.
I mean, Saturday sport is just like what kids do.
Yep.
And having your weightlifting comp on a Saturday, sometimes, you know, kids aren't going to only do weightlifting a lot of the time.
Yeah, it's
So,
quite
like,
rare.
It's hard for them to get to those comps, and it's good that there are comps on Sundays and stuff as well. But
Yep.
it is like for us in this sport of weightlifting, and if we want to attract the most amount of kids to it, we kind of have to convince them that one, they can do the sport as well as doing other sports,
Yep.
and then two, that this sport, the sport of weightlifting, training weightlifting, can potentially help their other sport dramatically.
There's no doubt in my mind that if you were to improve your weightlifting technique and ability, increase your strength, that you on the sporting field, whatever sport that will be, you're going to perform better, and also makes everyday life easier as well. So yeah, that's why I do my job. Yeah, because of that belief.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I think that's a big factor, and as you said, the school holidays is going to help with that. So.
In terms of teaching kids, like you were talking about, if you were a coach or someone who wanted to start a program within the school, one of the first things that you would do would be write up a plan.
Yes.
With objectives, goals, what the accomplishments would be if the plan was successful, and why that would be beneficial to both the school, the student, and potentially the other stakeholders involved, so parents, teachers, the principal itself. What like you talked about having objectives, but what would those objectives look like? What would those goals look like? What would the accomplishments look like? And maybe what would some of the challenges, because you're basically submitting a business plan to them.
Yeah.
Right? Like what does that look like? Like, can you run us through maybe if you were to do it again, what you would do?
For the weight room or?
For the weight room. For the weight room.
Okay. So essentially, if you were to look at the weight room specifically.
Just bring that closer again. Yeah. It sort of drifts away from you.
Breathe into heavy, push it away. Okay, so for the weight room specifically, you sort of you discuss the need to sort of be able to function properly as a human. You know what I mean? Like do basic movements. So your objective first would be to be providing some sort of service where you're looking at what is the sort of needs of the student, and then the student's quite similar to any other sort of human being. They need to be able to squat, bend at the hips, need to be able to lunge and jump and throw and all sorts of things. So you sort of break those down into different movements. Some key areas you might look at, you're like, okay, so this person needs to be able to do these movements, and in the weight room, these are the movements that we're going to be training for, or we're going to be doing movements that are going to support these other movements.
Sure. So you talk about something like really basic, like we were talking about deadlifts before.
Yeah.
So one of the first movements you might teach a kid is how to hip hinge effectively.
Yep.
And that might be like a stage 1 thing.
Yep.
And that would translate in the weight room to things like deadlifts, good mornings, RDLs, any sort of hip hinge, right?
Yep. And then more dynamically you go towards the cleans and snatches and stuff, and single leg variations of the more basic movements,
and then in that you would explain as well, like why you need to hip hinge effectively.
Yep. So if you look at the life example, it's like how many times are you picking something up? And the people will start to think, you're like, oh, you pick up, my bag, pick up this from the floor. Like every time, essentially, that's a deadlift. So key principles: keeping the object close to your body, keeping your back strong, and having some sort of hip hinge and bend at the knees to support with the legs to support in the weight.
Yeah.
And then you look at a sporting, you show them all the different sort of sporting models. You know what I mean? So like a good example would be like a scrum or a tackle position in rugby union or rugby league. Where you got to sort of like bend at the knees, hinge over the hips, and set the back. Because if your back is rounded in a scrum, you're talking about significant amount of force at that most bent point of your back.
Of course.
Yeah. So you sort of put it in 3 different categories. You go, this is what we do in the gym, everyday life example, sporting example.
And then lastly, you can talk about, I guess, the obvious challenges and the pushbacks, right?
Yeah.
If anyone, I mean, I get this as well, like when someone sees someone deadlifting heavy, they ask, oh, is that even necessary? Or is that, and sometimes it isn't necessary for that athlete, but a lot of the time being stronger doesn't hurt, right? Like the strongest people will be the most resilient as long as they have enough options to move as well.
Yeah.
Like if you're someone who just does the same thing over and over again, like you're not actually strong. Like if you deadlift every day, you might get really good at deadlifting, but you're not like strong in the general sense. You're just a deadlifter.
Yeah, and generally like the sport should take care of that, you know what I mean? So like if a kid is, like a fencer, we used that before, there is some significant benefits to be made through strength training, but the majority of their time needs to be developing their craft. You as a strength and conditioning coach are supporting them in those movements.
Of course.
But to be good at a sport, you have to be able to do that sport, like you don't want to be missing training sessions essentially because you're injured.
Yeah.
And if you go, well, we can do some strength training to reduce the chance of you being injured, and therefore you can train for longer, you can train potentially harder, and you can train at a higher level without getting injured. And that's where you see real improvements. You know what I mean? And then your strength training is also going to support you in those, more dynamic movements or more, stronger positions you have to hold. And so it's sort of like the sport is what's going to take care of that, like elite performance. You as a strength and conditioning coach, you are supporting those movements and you're supporting them through that journey and tailoring things towards that.
And it's also understanding that you might be part of a broader support structure as well.
Yeah.
Like it might, you have the athlete, then you have, their coach for the sport itself.
Yep.
Then you will be there to, obviously train them in their strength, but they might have other people around too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oftentimes it might be like a physiotherapist or I don't know, there's a billion different roles that are around, especially in elite performance, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing, people, if they're really good, people are going to want to jump on that person, you know what I mean? But every individual is going to have other influences, you know what I mean? Like their parents, their family, all their different coaches. So if they're doing multiple sports, you're talking about multiple different coaches that are influencing what they're doing. And then if they're, say, they're moving forward to that sport, they might be in a club or a school team, but also in a representative team. So that just adds in more coaches, more influences, more concepts, you know what I mean? So it's a very challenging thing,
And you've got to be able to navigate all of those people.
Yeah.
And we were kind of talking about this before the podcast, and a coach to any athlete has to be more than just a technical coach or a great programmer. They need to be able to navigate the political waters. They need to be able to do, they need to be able to manage the athlete and the athlete's relationships as well.
Yes, yes.
If they want to keep their job.
Yeah, well, and taking a step back, like putting your own ego aside at times, you know what I mean? Because there's going to be arguments that you may not be able to win. But sometimes there's a time to speak up, and there's a time to sort of do what's best for the athlete.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, and that just comes with experience and humbleness and knowledge about the broader picture. What does my athlete require, or what does this individual require? What's happening in their life right now, and whole lot of that is coming in from conversations and planning and reassessing and evaluation and stuff. Yeah. And that's the science to the art, I guess, or however you want to look at art to the science.
Yeah. We've talked about the showing a principal or whoever's in charge the outline for the reasons why this stuff is good for the students, for everyone that is in the school.
Yep.
What are some other benefits? We kind of alluded to a bit of it, like the psychological benefits and the social benefits and the academic benefits of having some sort of facility or just some sort of training program at a school.
Yep.
How would you write that up?
Those aspects?
Yeah. As in objectives, goals, and the rest of that.
Yeah. So I'd start off, in case I forget. It's good if you've done something similar, to have someone, like a case study, someone actually write in to say, this is what it did for me.
Yeah.
So say you've trained someone before and they're of a similar sort of clientele to what you're trying to pitch to, you have that case study saying, this is what this program did for me, or this was a part of my success, you know what I mean? And like a real genuine sort of source. It's sort of not something that, I coached this athlete for 2 weeks and, and this is where they got to. It's like, no, this person was with me for, 6 years, or, you know what I mean? Or this is their sort of providing information of what it achieved for them. And then you sort of look at it, okay, so we'll start with the psychological one first, you know what I mean? Like, so I think, you know, sort of sourcing out examples and, you know, like sort of studies that support your arguments, you know what I mean? And sort of demonstrating that, you know, like for a person to go on there and they might be in a team setting where they're sort of like hiding because they're not the best, and they might take less shots in basketball because they know they're unsuccessful, whereas on a platform they have to do so many sets or so many reps. So it's completely individualized and all focused on them, and it's up to them to improve. You know, are they going to sort of just go through the motions, or are they going to make themselves accountable and apply themselves to improve? And then you got the social aspect, and as I said, I'm a big believer in having the group sort of mixed, and it's all like opting to come in as opposed to like forcing people into a program that they might not be doing, might not want to do. Sorry. And then you're sort of talking about, you know, like just being in a sort of space where that they're all working towards their own individual goals, but they're doing it together. And I think that comes with a lot of recognition of like everyone's at their different starting points, and they're going to get, some people are going to get there to their end goal faster than others, but that's fine. And everyone's sort of working towards achieve their own little things. And that's a bit what life's about, you know, like you know, if you're in a similar field, you know, it's a big thing about today. People might get, you know, jealous of other people's success, but realistically, it's more just like you just got to look at it and go, well, that's where they're at. Like, fantastic for them. You congratulate them and stay, and also, but be mindful and focused on what I am trying to achieve and where it connects to my values. Sort of not this chasing like a particular paycheck. You know what I mean? And I think the weight room can sort of help with that, because each individual is going to have a different sort of outlook of where they want to be, and they sort of recognize that as the way they work through it, but they're all working together at the same time. And then I think physically, I think that's the one that's sort of the most easiest sort of showcase in terms of the weight room. Like, you know, you can show them how they're getting faster and how they're getting stronger, but then how does that apply to the actual, particularly like a field sport?
Yeah.
And this is the one where people will struggle with the most, because you're sort of saying that, okay, so it's sort of hard to quantify that because they've been doing weights training, they can tackle harder, you know what I mean, without doing like, you know, crash test dummies, you know, that sort of sports science stuff. So that's where you got to, again, link it to some science studies, and also, but I think that one comes with a bit of built up confidence.
Yeah.
And particularly, I like going with the sort of talking of injury prevention and all that sort of thing. And I think that's where you can really catch on to some non-believers when you start preaching the whole, like, this will keep your child bulletproof. You know what I mean? Like, this is going to make them participate in their sport better and for a longer period of time. And I think that's a real angle you can tackle.
And then the last two, I guess, is the psychological and academic.
Yeah, so I think academic is more just sort of creating a sort of space for them to free up their mind and sort of focus on something else, which is always good. And psychological, like, you know, kids sometimes lack confidence. And, you know, I think the weight room offers a lot of opportunities for self-improvement, and also like this sort of like a bit of a mental release. So just like get in there and, you know, bang some weights and you feel a bit better, you know, play some music. I think it's sort of, you can really create a good space of a weight room. Yeah?
And you can see that just in giving someone that the confidence, right? Like, you can see that physically as well.
Yeah.
You know, you see those rounded shoulders, that hunchback slowly disappear into like, you know, a more upright, more confidence. But like, body language is like amazing, right?
Yeah.
And if you, I mean, I've seen a lot of your ex-athletes from like I don't know many of them from last year or the year before, but I know obviously Rick, Nigel, and all those boys.
Yep.
And like, you just see the way they walk around, and you know, they're comfortable within their bodies.
Yeah.
And they're comfortable to have a chat and talk, you know, to anyone, which is amazing, right?
Well, you know, last year's school captain, Archie Fox, you know, he was involved in multiple sports. Like, he did first state rowing, you know, first rugby, and for CHS rugby as well. He did athletics at a very decent level, you know, like I think they definitely won regionals for 4x100. I can't remember their position at state, sorry, off the top of my head. Yeah, too many holidays. If I was in term, I'd remember. Anyway, but they did very successful. He was a part of that team, but he also did weightlifting. You know, you would have seen him at a few comps. You know, like he fitted that all in his schedule, and being school captain, and he's got a meeting with someone from Princeton this week.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And I have no confidence that he's prepared as possible for that meeting. You know, I think in some of the confidence has definitely come from his involvement in sport. You know what I mean? And could you go to a meeting with an alumni from Princeton without, you know, those sort of sporting backgrounds? Like, you know, you could, but would you be as confident in yourself and, you know, like used to sort of handling, you know, the curveballs that sport throws at you? Maybe not. So,
yeah.
So it's exciting for him. Not if he leaves me, I'm going to miss him a lot. You know, he's a good boy, but yeah.
But you know what? That must be hard as well. Like, because you're dealing with a athlete, just in general, that is there for a set amount of time generally.
Yeah.
And like from the start, you have to be prepared to be like, oh, you know, like you have to go off on your own now. Whereas when I take on an athlete, I don't think about that. I kind of think they're, you know, I mean, I know no one stays with you forever, things change, but you know, like I can sort of have those rose-colored glasses that they're going to stay forever, because there's a possibility that that's going to happen.
Yeah, it's the best and worst thing of a teacher's life, I think, to sort of see them develop into a mature adult, and then they're a mature adult and they're gone. You know, sometimes they come back and coach and they stick around, which some have.
Yeah.
But yeah, like essentially that's part of your job. You're setting them up for the rest of their life and laying that foundation physically, you know, mentally, to prepare them for life.
And I guess the hope as well is that, I mean, like it's nice for them to come back and give back, or nice for them to come back and visit, but you don't want them to be like beholden to the school, right? Like you want them to have their own life as well.
Yeah, like, and you know, like the boys that do come back and help, they're doing that. Particularly in this programs I'm involved, they're doing it because they want to.
Yes.
I believe, you know, they want to come back, they want to give, and they do it for as long as they can until like the rest of their life takes over, you know. And yeah, so that's just part of it. That's part of the school life experience, and part of our school life experience anyway. Yeah.
Do you enjoy being a teacher?
Oh, I love it. Yeah, absolutely love it.
What's your favorite part about being a teacher? We talk about a lot about your coaching, but not much about your teaching.
I think you know, every school is different, but I think at our school, I particularly like the fact that the boys generally want to do well at our school. You know what I mean? I like that, and so therefore, I like the fact that, you know, I can think creatively and critically to sort of make things purely about like achieving like the outcomes. You know what I mean? It's not sort of, don't need to be as focused on like this setting things up so that kids are behaving. I'm generally looking at things like, okay, so this is what they need to learn. How can I make that as, you know, creative, or make them think really critically or individually, you know what I mean? So that allows you to have so many different opportunities. So it makes them more interesting as a teacher. So I can set a task where they can choose anything within this, say you set out like a broad branch of like, okay, I need you to choose a topic from here. You need to answer these 4 questions based on that. So therefore, when I'm reading an assignment, say there's 40 assignments to read, they can all be different topics, but within this sort of scope. They're answering 4 questions, but it's up to them to choose what interests them.
Yeah.
So you can be like, okay, I need you to talk about a condition that affects a body system. So any body system, you know, so you know your cardiovascular and muscular system. So they might choose like a hamstring tear, and the reason they chose that is because they just tore their hamstring, or they've known someone that has, and they want to discuss it.
Or
so
they want to tear their hamstring.
Well, I don't know, but anyway, so like but that's sort of their interest. You know what I mean? Like, so you cover the basics, you cover what you need to cover, and then it's like, okay, let's allow this individual to focus on what interests them. And you know, that's some real learning to be had there. You know, just, you know, you cover what you need to cover, and then it's like, all right, you're gonna explore what interests you here. You know, which is exciting for them and for me.
When you see the differences in these athletes or students, like whether they're more creative or more, you know, I guess, you know, more ordered and logical, do you see like can you use that as idea of where they're going to go in their sporting life or their just life in general? Like, are you pretty good at predicting where someone's going to sort of end up, or
Yeah, you can definitely
gravitate towards?
you can definitely sort of see what they're more suited to.
Yeah.
But then again, kids can change. But it's also like you just want to sort of support them in choosing something that's going to suit them the best. You know what I mean? Like, so if some kids, you know, they might say, "Oh, I want to be a lawyer," you know, or maybe their parents have told them they're going to be a lawyer, but they don't like speaking. They're not good at public speaking. So, well, you need to gravitate towards something that either you got to work on your public speaking skills and join debating or public speaking and work on it, or you need to sort of start thinking about, you know, maybe engineer is your sort of go.
Yeah.
I mean, something more geared with, like, you're in front of a computer doing this, you know, or that. So yeah. I think it's more, like we said earlier, more about guiding them. You never want to sort of just like pigeonhole a kid. You know, we spoke about that in the weight training last podcast, so we don't sort of say like, this is your most preferred leg for a split jerk. It's like, you know, let them work it out. You know, you teach them both, and one day they're going to be like just gravitating towards one. So,
Balance.
yeah, all about balance, yeah, and a balanced approach, and it's sort of like you're creating a platform for learning and development. You're not sort of just like pushing them into a pigeonhole and just like, this is where you're at. You know?
Which is, for some people, what school can be, right? Like,
I think so.
I mean, when I was growing up and when I was in school, I found it super restrictive for myself, and I was really
In what sort of way? Like,
just like, I mean, I just didn't gravitate much to the academics, and
you went to an academic school.
and I went to an academic school that didn't have. I mean, they had some decent sports programs, but nothing that I was really interested in.
Yep.
I don't have really good hand-eye coordination, so the ball sports just hit me in the face.
Yep. Yeah.
So yeah, like I mean, I know that I wasn't a huge fan of school, and I think a lot of people do get that, right? Like, they struggle. But then I liked uni.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed university. Like,
Yeah.
so I guess it's just, you know, the way you learn and how you learn and
Yeah. Well,
why you learn.
one thing, you know, we're doing now is sort of having like thinking routines across multiple faculties. So one might be think, pair, share. So you do this across every single, like, so you can do it in English, in science, you know, religion, PDHPE. You all do the same thinking routine because it might work for that particular group of boys. And basically, you start a new unit, and let's just say they're starting a unit, and the unit is Olympic weightlifting.
Yeah.
And there might be a quote there from, you know, Andrew, saying Olympic weightlifting is the best sport in the world. And they have.
Sorry, Andrew is.
You.
Yes, but is that is that a quote that they've been given, or is that one of the students that's?
Nah, they've got this quote in front of them, and then they have to write what they think about that, without any prior knowledge.
Yeah.
So they haven't started the unit. They go, okay, well, obviously prior knowledge, but they haven't gone through the unit yet. It's the start of the unit, and they write down what they think about it. Then they pair up with someone, they share with them. That person has to write an opposing view. They have to say, so let's just say the first person agreed with the statement, the other person has to, even if they do agree with it, they have to write an opposing statement. So that just sort of get them thinking critically and sort of looking at different angles of that quote that's going to be connected with their unit. And then you get them to read it out. And so before you even start the unit, you sort of got to get a bit of a grasp of where these boys sort of heads at in terms of this topic, and what sort of information have they already been exposed to in regards to this, and where we're sort of going to go with this.
Yeah, wow.
And that's what you call like a thinking routine. So yeah.
What other, like, see, I see that, like, when you talk about that, I see that as something that I could integrate into when we have workshops and stuff here.
Yep.
You know, getting people to understand. Well, it's really easy. Like, you know, someone comes for a workshop here and they're like, I'm going to learn how to snatch, I'm going to learn how to clean and jerk, and that's all I'm going to do.
Yep.
Whereas if you get them in and you ask them the question, like, what do you think you're going to learn here?
Yep.
Or what is it that you want to learn here? And then get them to sort of discuss it. You probably get a better idea of what your curriculum should actually be. Yeah,
so you essentially, like, before they come in for the seminar, you could say, answer these questions. It can be like, I think a snatch is, or we do snatch because, and they might be like, we do snatch because it's a requirement or it's in the program. It's like, but then they go, at the end, I now do snatch because, or I know snatch is.
Yes.
Yeah, so you sort of like looking at where they're coming from. You tailor your curriculum slightly or a whole lot, depending on where you're from, to sort of fit what you think they may need, and then they report back to you about their perceived outcome. And so that way you're sort of like getting initial feedback where these people are coming from before you've even seen them, and then you can also discuss with them when they come in, hit the curriculum, and there'll be questions, of course, and then you're sort of seeing, did we achieve the outcome we set out, and other things could be like, I expect to learn, or I want to learn. Yeah, so different sort of questions that you can sort of use to tailor towards what sort of information you want.
Yeah. And I mean, it is super important as well, like when you're teaching someone a complex task.
Yep.
To ask them what they, and this is something I got from you as well a bit, is I think we're talking about, like, for example, learning the snatch.
Yep.
And like what I think the snatch is and what you think the snatch is may be completely different. And that's why sometimes, you may have more success with a certain athlete than I would, and vice versa, because, like what we're putting onto the athlete is what they're going to understand better.
Yep.
And asking the athlete what they think is going on when they're doing a movement, or what they think is happening when they're feeling pain, or when they're, doing anything is very important.
Yep.
And that data is just as important as visually looking at the athlete or having a recording of the athlete and seeing, like, their intention is just as important as actually doing the lift, right?
Yes, yeah. So and that's where the communication side of coaching comes into play, and it's that constant communication. Like you're asking, not so much asking questions, and they can sort of work out what answer they want to give you, but sort of asking a bit more open-ended questions, and like some of the things you suggested, like how do you feel? Why did you perform that? Because they might, you can see them, they might try something.
Yeah.
And you're like, how come you set up this particular way, or what was the purpose of that?
Yeah. Or what did you do differently?
Yeah.
And why did you do that?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Athletes will often do that without, consulting you, because they're trying to figure stuff out too, which is their prerogative. Like, they should be trying to figure out their bodies as well.
Yep.
But like an athlete suddenly decides that their feet are going from out wide to touching each other, and like as a coach, you see these athletes every day, so you're like, why the hell are they doing that? But they might have some idea in their head, or they might be feeling some discomfort being out wide, or whatever. So it's really important to, instead of just being like, hey, don't do that, put your feet back out wide, to ask them, like, is there a reason? What does it make you feel doing both ways? Or whatever.
Well, that's and you sort of create that sort of visual stimulus in your head, like where you're remembering what they've moved like. You know what I mean? I think with these new Year 7s that I've got right now, we're sort of been playing a lot with how many cues do you give them before they do their first squat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, are you like detailing everything, or you just sort of say, all right, feet flat, chest up, now let's squat. And you see them, some of them just straight down and up, and some sort of fidgeting around. They've got to move their feet wider and closer, and that's every coach has a different sort of expectation and how they want to deliver it. But I've sort of been more leaning towards that. You give some outcomes to be achieved, and you sort of are working with that athlete to achieve particular outcomes, and like what those outcomes are based on your coaching expectations.
And a really cool thing you told me last time, and I usually hate to repeat stuff that like we've talked about before, but you were talking about making sure that if an athlete achieves a goal or achieves an outcome, but let's say doesn't move perfectly still, that they get that praise for achieving that outcome. Yeah. And I've really taken that on board.
Oh, and it has been gone, right?
It's been amazing. Yeah. Because I'm a pretty hard person to deal with. Like, I'm a perfectionist. If I don't see someone moving correctly, it's very easy for me to just be like, hey, let's do that better.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
But having that outcome, being like, hey, you did so well. You definitely kept your back straight that time.
Yep.
Right? really good work. The next thing we're going to work on now is make sure your heels don't lift off the ground.
Yeah.
And I think that's the exact example used in the last podcast.
Yeah, because everyone's seen it, because the coach or someone will give them a particular outcome, they achieve that outcome, and then the coach doesn't address the fact that they achieved that outcome, but gives them something else to work on. So you're sort of like, and then you can, if you start thinking of it from an athlete's perspective, they're like, well, when do I get any sort of acknowledgement for these outcomes achieved? So if I said, Andy, I want you to squat and keep your feet flat, and you do that perfectly. And I don't say anything about your feet flat. I said, oh, but you didn't lift it fast enough. And you're like, okay, I lift it fast enough. And then you lift it faster. And then I say, something else, like give or take, whatever you want to say. And then the athlete sort of gets in this perspective like, well, no matter what I do, this person will never be happy or satisfied that I am working towards achieving their outcome set for me. Whereas if you go, that was good, now we're going to build towards this aspect that I want you to achieve. And I think that's where you really, when you go through that process, because everyone goes in those, you have off mornings, off days or whatever, but like when you actually go through that process, you sort of look back on it and go, well, that was not only, you feel good about how you approached it, but you also like, you can sort of sit back and like, I was less stressed because I was talking in a logical, methodical manner. I wasn't just shouting out, like outcomes left, right, and the center. It's like I was there, and I was like, there was moments of praise, and then there was like further things to work on, potentially like tasks for them to think of, and it's this ongoing process.
And it's about being present, right?
Oh,
like present to the athlete. Like they need to know that you're there watching them.
Yeah.
And they need to know that there's a clear goal and there's clear steps. You don't just jump up the stairs. It's one step at a time. And you might have an athlete that can take 2 steps at a time or 3 steps at a time. Maybe even 5 steps at a time. And that's really cool as long as they're ticking off those boxes. So as a coach, you need to have some sort of framework for the movements that you teach. And some sort of framework for, just like you do with programming. Like everyone gets caught up in percentages. Everyone's like, oh, this week we're doing 65%. Next week we're doing 63%. Oh, sorry, that's less. 70%. Everyone knows that, and then they're like, oh, we're going to do 10 reps this week, and we're going to do 8 reps, and we're going to do 5 reps and 3. But with the movements itself, like especially teaching young kids, or teaching someone who hasn't moved before, there's a lot of give and take. Like you can have check boxes for that too. Like you're learning a deadlift, some people can start from the floor, but other people must start from blocks, because they don't have the flexibility to get to the floor with a straight back. And then you slowly build that down, like ticking those boxes.
And I think particularly getting people started, that's what I've sort of looked at. So we had like these particular programs that have been set in stone, like sort of been there for a while, and then I sort of thought, their first program they're kind of on for a while before they sort of can progress. So what I did was I created a program like an induction, a bit of a bridge, to sort of get them started, and they can achieve smaller outcomes, and they can experience, oh, I've achieved this. And because that works so well, that I'm actually going to continue sort of breaking it down a little bit at the initial stages, so they can sort of go through, and each sort of step becomes a little bit more increasingly hard, like expectations and more outcomes potentially to achieve with each program. So they're sort of starting off, and they can sort of really work out a few little things they need to achieve, and they achieve those, and they progress, and there's a few more things and a bit more challenging, and sort of work your way through that. And I think particularly with the clientele I'm dealing with, I believe that's going to be quite successful moving forward.
And do the athletes get anything when they achieve like a certain program or finish off? Like one thing that's really cool, for example, about like a martial arts is that you can go up belts. Like you might get a stripe here, a stripe there, and then you go up another color. And it's, like even if you don't do anything with it, it's just a really cool way of saying, hey, look, I actually achieved something. I ticked off these outcomes, and I've been graded, I've passed,
Yeah.
I'm able to go to the next level.
Yeah.
Do you guys do anything like that, like stars or certificates? I'm
Not
sure.
currently. We do reward consistent training.
Yep.
So the school has like an award scheme system where they get so many points for participating in extracurricular activities and being on the merit list and all sorts of things. So if they train like a certain number of times in the weight room per term, they get an extra few points for that. So we've been rewarding consistency, and I guess essentially moving up in a program is a reward in itself. But I will look into potentially having some sort of physical presence of the fact that you moved up programs. We used to write it up on the board, but then we've got a few different rewards up there now. So
So
I will look into that. Yeah.
Just for me, like that's something I've wanted to do for our guys. Like to have, some skill levels and ways of, introducing some sort of like system.
Yep.
To show the athletes that they are at a certain level.
Yep.
I mean, the easiest way, obviously, is who lifts the most weights.
Yeah.
But, in a weightlifting gym.
Yep.
But, sometimes you just have a freak come off from nowhere and lift amazing amounts of weights, and they might not have put in the work.
Yeah, and I think and sometimes with kids or just with humans, it's so simple. Like you write out a goal for them, or like if they achieve an outcome, it's not just like say they moved up a program, like one thing I do, it's very lame, I know, but when the kids complete the induction program, it's a piece of paper. I go home and frame this. In years to come, when you're big and famous, you can say, "This is my first ever weights program."
Yeah, that's cool. I love
what I mean? Like this,
Yeah.
this sort of you taking those few moments of sort of like the high fives, the pats in the back, or the fist pumps. I think that's something that it's a good thing to do.
Well, the fist bump is a powerful tool.
It is. You don't want
to be too free with it though. You need to fist pump everyone.
Yeah, white lights, everyone.
They got to earn it.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think I will look into that. I'm sort of more. I think we do reward them with an award scheme for the consistent participation and the fact that they are moving into programs, which then sort of requires them to learn new things. I think I like to think that they're striving to learn new things. They're not looking for any sort of free cookies or anything like that. So,
yes, for sure. So so I started a long time ago, like writing out my objectives and stuff.
Yep.
And I never got around to finishing it. So
Yep.
I'll show you one day. But, because, there is obviously the AWF, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K,
Yep.
which is just on weight lifted.
Yep.
But that's not really showing a proficiency within the sport, right?
Yeah.
So you might have, can the athlete squat, bench, deadlift as like one level?
Yep.
Yes, they can do that well to a high proficiency.
Yep.
And the proficiency is on movement, not so much weight.
Yeah. Well, all of our competencies is all movement competencies.
Yes.
Nothing to do with weight-based stuff.
Yeah, which is smart, right?
Yeah.
And then the same thing, later down the line, it might be like snatch, clean and jerk.
Yep.
Or, depending on where the movements are. And then it might be ability to be adaptive. So yes, you can snatch and clean and jerk, but can you power snatch at a high level, power snatch at a low level, power snatch at the lowest level right before it gets to, full snatch?
Yeah.
Because that's a skill in itself that a lot of weightlifters can't do.
Yep.
They have this high power snatch, or they have the lowest of low full snatches, or their power snatch has their butt sticking out all the way behind them, and they're not actually just slowly getting lower.
Yep.
So you've got that, and then what you were talking about the other day with, can you split with both legs?
Yep.
What weights can you do with both legs? Like how much of a mover are you?
Yeah, and sometimes even like if you're at that top level, can you go back and still achieve those outcomes?
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like let's just say you had to do 10 chin-ups to progress from this stage to this stage. Can you go back and still do those 10 chin-ups?
Yeah. Yeah. Like what if you started off as like a 40 kilo kid,
Yep.
and over time, like you've just developed into this behemoth of a man,
Yep.
you know, weighing 100 kilos, can you still do a push-up or a pull-up? You might be able to bench, you know, 150 kilos or whatever it is, but yeah, can you still do those things?
Yeah, and because like, you know, everyone loves to say that, you know, like, this is my sport, so I don't need to do these things, but like, you kind of need to make sure that they're still an athlete. They can still achieve, you know, things, because if you're, in my opinion, if you're sort of too geared towards one particular thing, so one, you know, it can help avoid boredom doing this other training, but also, you know, being generally healthier is going to improve your weightlifting training. If you know got a little bit of cardiovascular work, is not going to, you know, destroy them as a weightlifter, you know, because they're going to recover faster between lifts, I believe. And, you know, it's also going to make them feel a little bit healthier and better. You know what I mean? And we're talking simple things, like if they're, you know, like a super heavy, yeah, just going for a little walk, you know, 20 minutes, you know, getting some fresh air, moving those legs, getting the lungs working, you know, and that can be done on a day where they're not lifting.
And I mean, you see that with the big strongmen now that are all looking so much leaner than they used to be.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Oh,
like
well,
those guys.
you mean like actual strongman?
Yeah,
training?
like you look
Well,
at
they're-
Half-Thor and
mate,
stuff, they're like, you know, just jacked.
They're fitter than a lot of weightlifters. Like their sport requires them to be moving for a significant period of time. Sometimes, you know, like up to, you know, like, you know, over a minute, you know, or longer. You know, like it's hard going on the heart. They got to have some, you know, some good lactic threshold training.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
That is a tough sport. A
Yeah.
sport I wouldn't wish upon anyone else. Like, it's
I think.
hard on the body as well.
Well, I think it takes a certain type of human to do that. That's an extreme level of strength. You know what I mean? I think I watched this fantastic documentary. It was like the history of strongman. It was a few years ago, so obviously the stats will have changed. But I think over a 30-year period, 15 years had been won by someone from Iceland. So they went through Iceland, looking at, you know, their history. You know, the fact that they were descendants from Vikings and all these other factors.
Well, they're hard people, right?
Yeah, their diet and their climate is hard, you know what I mean? It's like what sort of breeds that sort of athlete, you know what I mean? Like those genetic factors, you can't, like we, you know, we like to think that we can just do whatever we want. You know, in terms of that top level, you're talking, you know, a few things need to be in your favor sometimes.
Yes. But that's with anything, right? Like if you, the more odds you can stack in your favor, or the more odds you can stack in your child's favor or your athlete's favor, why wouldn't you?
Of course.
Right?
Of course, yeah. And that's where you sort of like, you're not sort of like pushing them towards something, but you might be guiding them or just like telling them when they're good. So if you have someone that walks into your gym and they've never heard of the sport Olympic weightlifting, but they, you know, they start moving, you're like, oh, you're quite good at this. You know, like you should really pursue this because you might actually be quite a good weightlifter.
Yeah.
You know, and that goes for any sort of sport, you know what I mean? Like we just sort of, and that's what coaches should be doing, you know, like that's, you know, just, it doesn't take a hell of a lot to sort of trigger an idea that they might never thought of before, or it might have been all like so internal that they haven't expressed it. Then when someone says it to them, they go, oh, okay, cool. What does that entail? And they start going through the building blocks, like those objectives we're talking about, the progressions.
What was the documentary called? Do you remember?
Let's YouTube it later.
Yeah.
It was cool.
yeah, because you know Big Z's here, right, in Australia.
Yeah.
He's going to be in Penrith like in a few days. So I don't know when I'm going to put this out, but if you guys want to meet Zadrinas Zavikas, he is going to be at Adonis Athletics Penrith in like, I think this weekend or next weekend, something like that.
So that's where Phil sometimes works, yeah?
Phil doesn't work at that Adonis. He
Oh.
works in the one in Granville.
Oh, excuse me.
But I think he does do some sort of stuff with all of them
Okay.
to some extent. But guys, you should definitely check that out if you're really a strongman fan. I don't know how much English he speaks.
Yeah, well,
but yeah,
I'm sure
'cause
they
he's
can get a few
Lithuanian.
things out.
Yeah. But yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah.
Actually, guys, if you want to check out another cool documentary, there's a series on Netflix right now called Legends of Strength. And it is, there's only 2 episodes up, but it was produced by Rogue, you know, like Rogue Equipment.
Yep.
And the first one is on Eugene Sandow, which is really cool.
Yep.
And then the second is on the Great Apollon.
Yep.
So both of those were really fun to watch.
Yep.
And just to see the feats of strength
Yep.
and why that physical culture sort of grew. Because a lot of our problem now within the sport of weightlifting is that weightlifting is a barbell sport, and
Yep.
barbells are very far removed from real life.
Yeah, they can be. Yeah.
You know, I mean, in
Depend-
terms of a show, and this is why we have problems, I guess, with viewership as well. You know, like you see someone like Rajeevan clean and jerk 214 kilos.
Yeah.
And we know it's impressive because we've tried to clean and jerk 50 kilos.
He's like a poster boy for weightlifting. He looks
the part.
Yeah, he moves beautifully as well. Like,
and that's why I used him.
Yeah.
Because he's a great example. But for the regular person who's watching that, it just looks like a couple of red discs on a bar.
Yeah.
Like, especially with the grace in which he moves, like it doesn't look that hard.
Yeah.
Does he make it look hard?
No.
No, and I mean that's a skill in itself.
Yeah.
But what these great strongmen were able to do was, you know, they would do things like lifting horses. Everyone knows how heavy a horse is.
Yeah.
Even if you don't know how heavy a horse is, it's fucking heavy.
Yeah.
It looks heavy.
Yeah.
You know, it's a living thing, and you know, holding that over your head, which is essentially what Liu Jiajun's doing, holding 2 horses above his head.
Yeah.
You know,
and you just that was I guess strength sports. So they've battled with that. They're sort of guiding towards the purists and being are we an entertainment?
Yes.
You know what I mean? And I think Arnold's Encyclopedia on Bodybuilding even speaks about that, where they couldn't, because they sort of, it goes through phases, you know, like they went through a phase where it was just like, who's the biggest?
Yes.
And then they go, oh, well, everyone got sick with people just being big. They had to achieve an athletic feat. So they had to impress the crowd. So then they started doing things like lifting cars and all kinds of things, as well as doing their flex. And then it goes through different stages. And I think, I guess weightlifting, because there's so much, like going on behind the scenes. If you're just out in the crowd, it can appear to be boring, even though as coaches we know. So I guess
coaches, participants, and athletes.
Yep.
You know, like if you are a weightlifter, you get it.
Yep.
But if you're not a weightlifter, for example, if you're someone's mom or someone's dad, someone's brother, and you're watching, you're like, oh.
I think Vu did it best when he had those little booklets for at his compass. I think last year, out of all the club comps I went to, I think that may have been the one that had the most number of spectators.
Yeah.
Like he advertised that well, but he also had introduction to rules so people can read through stuff, and also athlete profiles. So that was fantastic. So hats off to him for doing.
He also gave out really cool prizes.
Yes, yeah. So that was cool. So tapping into, I'm not sure how he did that, whether he tapped into sort of particular sponsors or anything like that. But yeah, that was really cool.
He did a really good job.
Yeah, so
I can't wait to see what he does this year.
Yeah, so I think maybe that's a call out on people like me and other people to really step up our game, and how do we do things to sort of create that sort of buzz and all that sort of thing.
Well, I guess speaking of the booklet idea, that's a really simple way.
Yep.
You know, you could write down this 100 kilos is basically the same as your fringe. So this person is lifting a fringe over their head.
And
or you could bring it into their world.
Yeah.
Because that's what we have to do. And so that's what strongman is, right? Strongman is an exhibition more than a competition.
Yep.
Whereas weightlifting is more of a competition than an exhibition.
Yeah.
And you can see it because we don't give our athletes enough rest in a competition. We don't do any of that stuff because it's about, getting through it fast in the most efficient manner as well.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a bit of that, and so I think sometimes we are getting better at that as a sport, particularly in this so far as I've seen over the years, you know what I mean? And but the fact that people are sort of becoming more aware of what a qualifying standard is to reach this, and there's also certain different things you can qualify for, and there's different meanings for different competitions, and
Well, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So we can talk about that quickly. Is that New South Wales now has a qualification for state championships
for the seniors,
For the seniors,
yeah.
Is it? I think there is a qualification for the juniors.
Oh, juniors,
as well.
yeah, but not youth, I don't think.
Yeah. So the cool thing about that isn't that it's not high.
No.
It's a J standard or something, or an I standard, which is the lowest tier or the second lowest tier. So you can qualify very easily.
Yep.
But the really cool thing is that it forces you to have to do a competition before you do state champs.
Yeah, and
So
and I was part of the discussion that we're sort of talking about, and it's not sort of saying like making it like, you know, elitist, or it's sort of just saying, look, if you're genuine about doing well at state, and you know, senior state, it's earlier this year, but it's, you know, it's a few months into the year. It's
Yeah.
like realistically, you should have hit at least one comp before that.
of course.
And like, and that's what we sort of, because I think we discussed it last podcast, where we have lifters going to big events, and it's like, goodness, when was the last time they competed? You know what I mean? Like, when was the last time we generally saw them under competition, you know, sort of treatment or climate? And yeah, it's something that I think is going to boost up the sport. You know, so I mean, if you sort of have some sort of standard for your state, you know, then potentially nationals could be an even better standard.
Of course.
Yeah.
And you know, like the hard thing is in weightlifting, you always want to be on your best, but you don't have to be.
No.
For example, like if you're going to do a club comp, just qualify for states.
Yep.
Like you do not have to push your hardest.
Yep.
The point of it is to just, you know, dust off the cobwebs, do some moving in front of some people.
Yep.
You know, you can practice other things.
Yep.
You can practice being really perfect with your technique.
Yep.
You can practice warming up better.
Yep.
You can practice warming up worse.
Yep.
You can be like, look, I'm actually going to leave it right up until, you know, 5 minutes before I go, and that's when I'm going to start warming up, because at nationals last year, or at whatever comp you did last year, for some reason something went wrong and I had to do that.
Yeah, so yeah, you can look at that two ways. You can be, I'm going to perfect my warming up and my presence on the platform and qualify, or you're going to be like, I've already qualified. This is a comp where I'm going to deliberately put myself under pressure in certain aspects. So that could happen, so you're planning for the worst. So you can look at it either way, and you know, both ways have their merit. You know what I mean? And so yeah, that's something definitely we've been talking about, and I think that's where you're going to start to see more people coming to club comps and having their own personal goals. Like, you know, we don't just want people showing up just to, I'm just going to go lift because I have to. It's like, no, you're going there for a particular purpose. You're going to qualify for state or whatever it is, or it's like going to work on my warm up.
Yeah. Well, it's like we've been talking about this whole thing. It's about objectives, right?
Yeah.
Setting those check boxes to tick.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing people should be aware of is generally we have this, whether it's spoken or unspoken, rule that you want to lift at state championships to be eligible, in New South Wales at least, to lift at nationals.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So some people are in a tough position, not a tough position, it's really easy to rectify, but in that they would have qualified for nationals at last year's nationals.
Yep.
But they will still have to do a competition this year if they haven't done any other competitions to qualify for states to then go to nationals.
Yep.
Right? Which, you know, it's very easy for that to forget about that. And for example, we have like Jack, for example, hasn't done a competition since nationals.
Yep.
So he will have to do a comp this year before states to qualify for states.
Yep.
Even though he's already qualified for nationals.
Yeah. But it's, yeah, I think it is sort of, as like a high performance New South Wales unit, you're sort of looking at like what sort of things do we need to see happening with our athletes, and one of them is we need to see where they're up to.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean that they need to be peaking at every comp that they're lifting at, but sort of see whereabouts they are. You know what I mean? Like, are they moving well, or are they injured? Is the fact that we haven't seen them in a comp because they're injured? And I think these sort of, you know, sort of like protocols is going to sort of bring those things closer to the forefront.
And well, it definitely helps. I mean, you talked about, like if we look at what happened in the Commonwealth Games with like Simplis and stuff.
Yep.
You know, you had an athlete that he hadn't seen for a long time.
Yep.
And then he showed up injured and couldn't actually compete.
Yep.
And that spot could have gone to someone else, potentially.
And like
And
that,
I don't know what went wrong, but I'm just
I
guessing.
don't know the ins and outs, but like I think that's kind of what, as a state, we're sort of looking at. You know, it's like let's set up protocols so that we can sort of assess how the state's doing, and you know, like, and when you have people lifting more often, you sort of can create more challenging situations, and people are moving up and getting more experience, so that they're not getting to nationals and that's their second comp ever.
And the more people that compete at a local level pushes the like the capabilities of the whole as well, right?
Oh, well,
Like if you have big lifters turning up to local competitions,
yep.
then you have the kids that are going to be like, oh, that person's pretty good. I'm going to aim for that person.
Yep. And so the last comp of the year was the Zubin one.
Yeah.
And that was, you know, the Q Center, yeah?
Quay Center.
Quay Center, excuse
Key
me.
Center.
Key
Key
Center.
Center. Yeah. QUAY.
Yeah, that's
Key.
it. Anyway, I just call it Homebush. So basically, I had 3 lifters doing their first comp. 2 of them were in the first session, which had about 3 or 4 guys and I think about 4 or 5 girls. That was the first session. And then I had my other lifter who was slightly heavier, but actually like currently he's a little bit not as strong as the other 2.
Yeah.
So he was lifting all with men and like some big boys. So he was sharing the platform with Carl Bruce. And when I mean sharing the platform, like my lifter would warm up and then Carl would start his warm up, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was a big difference between when they were lifting. But the fact that he was in the same sort of presence as someone that in that same comp qualified for junior worlds is a big deal. And you know, we're talking about like lifting the sport. If you see someone, it's their first comp and they've witnessed someone warm up and compete and qualify for, you know, junior worlds, that's a cool thing. It doesn't mean that doesn't have every comp, of course, but that did happen, and that was a good experience.
And did they talk at all?
Yeah. You know, shout out to Carl. He was a lovely kid. You know, he gave out some fist pumps to.
He wasn't too loose with them, though, right?
Nah, I think it was well deserved. My lifter lifted, you know, 6 from 6. You know, he was nervous as hell. He was sweating before the weigh-in. So I think.
Did he weigh in with all that sweat?
Yeah. So yeah, it was pretty. That was a good experience, you know. And there was not, you know, there was other lifters there lifting huge weights as well.
Yeah.
And fantastic, you know, end of the year comp, but like, you know, that was the standout. Someone qualifying from junior worlds in this, you know, the same sort of arena. So yeah, that was a good experience. And if we're going to sort of lift up the sport, they're the experiences we want. So it's not just about getting more lifters in there, but it's also improving the quality of lifters and also the quality of humans. We want good people involved in the sport. There's good people create good experiences and also, you know, more likely to add value to the sport, you know, other than just potentially just lifting, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you want people that are gonna to give back by officiating, coaching.
Yeah, not everyone can do that, but this, you know, like, you know, Kyle could have just sat there with his headphones on, but he chose to communicate with my lifter and fist bump. He had every right to be like, this is all about me. I'm gonna qualify. I'm gonna speak to no one else. But he gave some of his time to speak to my nervous young athlete, which I appreciate.
And so, which is a big deal.
Oh yeah, and so did every athlete, every coach there was supportive of my brand new boys, and that was a fantastic experience. So thanks to everyone for that. That was their first comp, and they were only, you know, 15, 16 years old, and so yeah, it was cool.
So we should give a shout out to Carl Bruce and Izzy Lorenzi, who own Uplift Strength and Performance. I hope I got that right.
Oh,
I might have got that wrong, but they're in Lidcombe.
There's definitely uplift in there.
Yeah.
And I actually got some shoes off Izzy as well.
Cool.
Good discounted price, so 2 pairs of shoes from her. So like some smaller sizes for my itty bitty boys. So one of them was like I think 7.5 size, and then another one's like about 8.5. So that's been put to good use.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Cool. I think well, we've done an hour and a half already.
Like, we're good at this.
We are good at this. Maybe that's a good place to leave off for today.
Yeah, positive point. I think it's good.
Where can people find you?
So my Instagram is at Coach Kurt Rich.
Yeah.
Yep. So just hit me up on that, and if you need to sort of get in touch with me any other ways, it's probably the best starting point, and then we can just go from there.
Just slide into his DMs, guys. So if you do have questions about starting a program, or maybe some objectives or whatever, I guess that's a great place to reach out to you on.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's a good starting point. That's probably, it comes up on my phone. That's like the easiest way to get started. Yeah.
Awesome. And do you have anything cool coming up that you want to plug?
Or? No. I was in Canberra. That was a cool experience. So I guess shout out to Lynn Jones. He actually came and watched my boys lift.
Cool.
So I went down to Canberra because the senior rowers are there for a week doing all their rowing, and I thought they're rowing all week. Let's give them something fun to do. We're going to do some weights. So went down there, did a weight session with them, and watched them row the next day. And Lynn Jones donated some time to watch them lift. So
That's awesome.
Big thanks to him. It was cool. The boys love that. He's got a cool way of communicating. So they love his accent.
I would love to get him on the podcast. He's a busy guy though.
He is. I think just take the 3-hour drive.
Oh no, I'll definitely have to go up there to do it.
Yeah.
He's not coming down here. It's actually hard to get people down here now.
But he did say he's going to come to pretty much every nationals.
Yeah.
And we have junior nationals in New South Wales.
Is that confirmed?
I think so.
Are you allowed to say that?
Oh no, I'm not allowed to say anything. But I think that's what's happening.
Yeah.
I think. And he did say if it's in New South Wales, he's coming.
Yeah.
And I think I'm pretty sure New South Wales versus ACT is also in New South Wales. So.
Oh really?
So
it's not going to be at the AIS.
Yes, I think he'll be coming. If he said if that's the case, he'll be coming as well. So he will be in New South Wales if you want to touch base.
Gonna have to just like really get in there quick.
Yeah.
Book him out for 10 hours. I assume that's what a podcast with him will be like. Too many stories.
So, he'd have a brilliant. He's a good man though. I like him. Yeah, he's you can't put a value on those sort of experiences. Having someone like that watch your lifters and sort of just stand next to them, just hear what they say and see how the athlete responds and go with that. So
yeah, I mean, any time I have a coach come in, no matter how long they've been in the sport or whatever, I always am very interested in what they have to say and stuff like that. Yeah. I'm actually pretty excited to see what you have to say about my guys today. Yeah. Hopefully you can give them some tips that are a bit different.
Well, we'll see how we go, yeah. Should be fun.
No pressure.
Yeah, they all got a PB today because of one cue I give them.
Look, sometimes it seems like that, right? But every athlete is an accumulation of everything that's come before, right?
Yes, definitely.
You're just that next little step.
Yeah, so easy.
Right. Guys, you can find RAW Barbell Club on all of our social medias. So that's Instagram, Facebook, YouTube especially. Make sure you check out our YouTube channel, which is hopefully where you're watching this, or if you're listening to this on podcast, that's awesome too. But we put out lots of good content. In fact, we're going to film some cool videos after this, right?
Yep, let's do it.
I've got a few ideas other than the one I already told you about.
Oh.
So,
off the cuff.
Off the cuff ones, yeah. And guys, make sure you check out our Instagram because that's where we put up all of our training videos, and you can check out our stories, which is usually pretty funny to see what the guys here get up to. And lastly, if you love this podcast, please subscribe to either Apple Podcasts, Google, wherever you listen to this, or our YouTube channel, and just share it with a friend.
Yep.
Because I'm sure they would love to listen to Kurt talk about training
outcomes.
Training outcomes. How many times do you reckon we said training outcomes in the
74?
Were you counting?
No, I just
Guys, thank you so much for listening. I will see you next time. Hopefully without too much of a break in between this time. All right, let's end there.